Mom, we're all here because we love you, Maxio said, his voice carefully measured. I stared at my youngest son sitting across from me in my own living room. 58 years old, that's what they wanted to discuss. Not my health, not a real problem. Just my age. The 7 of them had arranged this. My 3 sons, Maxio, Liveo, and Hugon. My 2 daughters-in-law, Emmeline and Corelie. My sister Nelilyn, and my brother-in-law, Criseo. They sat in a semicircle around my favorite chair like it was a tribunal, like I was a defendant. The afternoon light cut across the hardwood floor of my home, the house I'd owned for 22 years, the house I'd raised them all in, and suddenly it felt like a courtroom. I set my coffee mug down on the side table. Carefully, the ceramic made a soft click against the wood. My fingers stayed on the handle for a moment longer than necessary. "I'm listening," I said. Nelilyn leaned forward. My sister. We'd shared everything growing up. She looked at me like I was a stranger now. "Ja, you live alone? You're at an age where that's becoming dangerous. You've had 2 minor falls in the past year. You forget things. Last month you left the stove on." "Once," I said. "I left it on once." "Exactly," Emmeline interjected. She was Maxio's wife. She'd never liked me. I could see it in the way she'd always held herself slightly away from me at family dinners, the way her smile never reached her eyes. Once is enough. What if it had been worse? What if you'd been hurt? I stood up. I needed to move. Staying seated while they circled me felt like drowning. My living room suddenly felt smaller, the walls closer. I walked to the window and looked out at my garden. The roses were blooming. I'd planted them myself 15 years ago. They came back every spring without asking permission, without needing anyone's help. "So, what exactly are you proposing?" I asked the window. Huon spoke, my eldest. The careful one, the one who'd always tried to be the peacemaker. "We think you should consider moving in with one of us, or into a senior community. Somewhere you'd have support, people around you, safety." The word hung in the air like poison. Safety. As if I was fragile, as if I couldn't be trusted with my own life. I turned back to face them. I don't need support. I'm not infirm. I'm not confused. I'm 58 years old, and I'm perfectly capable of living in my own home. Corelie, Leveo's wife, pulled out a tablet. She had documents prepared? Of course she did. She was an accountant. Everything had to be numbers and projections. "We've looked into several facilities. There's one 20 minutes from Leveo's house. It's very nice. They have activities, healthcare on site, and you'd have your own apartment." "My own apartment," I repeated. I heard the bitterness in my voice. I didn't try to hide it. "In a facility, with strangers, supervised activities. That's what you're offering me." "A cage, with amenities. It's not like that," Criseo said. "My brother-in-law. He'd always been weak. He went wherever Nelilyn led. It's about community, about not being alone." "I like being alone," I said. The silence that followed was deafening. Maxio stood up. He was the middle child, the one who'd always been the most ambitious, the most certain he knew what was best for everyone. "Mom, we're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to protect you. You're getting older. Things change. Your body changes. Your mind—" "My mind is fine," I said. "Is it?" Emmeline's voice was sharp. "Because you called me last week asking if you'd already called me. You were confused about whether you'd talk to me or to Corelie." I remembered that call. I'd been tired. I'd been thinking about 3 things at once, but I wasn't confused. Not really. I was just busy. I was just living my life. "I'm done with this conversation," I said. Nelilyn stood. She crossed the room toward me. My sister. The person who'd known me my entire life. Gia, please. Don't make this harder than it has to be. We've already looked into the finances. We can help with the costs. You could sell this house. That money could go toward... Sell my house? The words came out louder than I intended. This is my home. I'm not selling it. Why not? Hugon asked. He genuinely seemed confused. You're here alone. It's too much house for one person. The maintenance alone. I maintain it fine. Do you? Coralie pulled up a photo on her tablet. My roof. There were missing shingles on the north side. I'd been meaning to call someone about that. We drove by last week. We noticed this. When was the last time you had it inspected? They'd driven by my house without telling me. They'd inspected it like I was a property they were evaluating. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I had to sit back down. How long have you all been planning this? I asked quietly. The exchange of glances told me everything. This wasn't spontaneous. This was coordinated. They'd discussed it without me. They'd made decisions about my life in conversations I wasn't part of. We've been talking about it for about 3 months. Liveo admitted. He at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. We wanted to approach it carefully, thoughtfully. 3 months. 90 days of my family discussing my competence, my safety, my future, without including me in a single conversation. 90 days of planning this intervention like I was an addict who needed saving. And what if I refuse? I asked. Crisio shifted uncomfortably. Refuse what exactly? All of it. The move, the facility, the selling of my house. What if I say no? Nelilyn sat back down beside me. She reached for my hand. I let her take it, though every instinct told me to pull away. Then we'll have to take legal action. We've spoken to a lawyer. If you're deemed unable to care for yourself, we can petition for conservatorship. It would be easier if you cooperated. If you made the choice yourself. The words landed like grenades. Conservatorship. They were threatening to take control of my life, my finances, my home, if I didn't agree to what they wanted. My sister was threatening me with legal action while holding my hand. I pulled my hand back. Get out, I said. Mom, Maxio started. Get out of my house, all of you, now. They didn't move immediately. They exchanged more glances. They were waiting for me to change my mind, to soften, to become reasonable. I watched them realize I wasn't going to. Slowly, they gathered their things. Coralie closed her tablet. Emmeline stood first, then the others followed. Nelilyn was the last to leave. She paused at the door. We're doing this because we love you, she said. I didn't respond. I listened to them file out, listened to car doors close, listened to engine start. I stood at my window and watched them drive away, and I felt something inside me crystallize. Something hard and clear and certain. They wanted to take my life from me. They wanted to make me small and managed and safe. They wanted to erase my autonomy because it made them uncomfortable, because my independence challenged something in them, because I was a woman alone, and that frightened them more than any actual danger ever could. I picked up my phone. I had calls to make. The lawyer I hired was named Leviel Rodriguez. He came recommended by a friend from my book club, someone whose judgment I trusted. His office was downtown, in a building that smelled like old wood and leather. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 50s, with sharp eyes that didn't miss anything. I told him everything. The intervention, the threat of conservatorship, the way they'd been planning it for 3 months without my knowledge. Leviel listened without interrupting. When I finished, He leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. "Do you have any actual medical conditions that would support their claim?" he asked. "No, I'm healthy. My last physical was excellent. My doctor said I'm in better shape than most people my age." "Have you been formally evaluated by a psychiatrist? Any cognitive assessments?" "No, of course not. There's nothing wrong with me." "Good," he said. "That's very good, because what they're describing, leaving the stove on once, forgetting a phone call, that's normal aging. That's not grounds for conservatorship. Conservatorship requires clear evidence of incapacity, medical documentation, usually from multiple physicians, a court hearing. It's not something a family can just decide to do." Relief flooded through me. "So they can't actually do it?" "They can try," Leviel said, "but they'd fail. However, I want to be clear about something. Even though they'd fail, the process itself would be traumatic. It would involve court appearances, medical evaluations, your finances being scrutinized. It would be expensive and exhausting and public. Some people use the threat of it as leverage, knowing that the mere prospect will make someone capitulate. So they're bluffing. Possibly, or they genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. Either way, we need to protect you. I'd recommend we document everything. Get a fresh medical evaluation from your doctor confirming your competence. Put together a portfolio showing you're managing your life and finances responsibly. If they do file, we'll be ready." I nodded. "How much will this cost?" "My retainer is $2,000. If we go to court, it could be more, but I don't think we'll need to. Once they realize you're prepared to fight, most families back down." I paid him that day. I wrote a check from my account. My account, the one I'd been managing perfectly well for decades. Over the next 2 weeks, I got a comprehensive physical. My doctor ran every test available: blood work, cognitive screening, balance assessment, vision and hearing evaluation. Everything came back normal, better than normal. My cholesterol was excellent. My blood pressure was textbook. My memory tests showed no decline. My doctor, a woman named Shayna Bailey, who'd been my physician for 8 years, wrote a detailed letter confirming my full cognitive and physical competence. I also hired a contractor to fix my roof. I had the house professionally inspected. Everything was documented. I organized my financial records. I updated my will, making sure my wishes were crystal clear. I was not going to give them any ammunition. Then I waited. The letter came 3 weeks later. It was from a law firm in the city. Nelilyn and my sons had filed a petition for conservatorship. They were claiming I was unable to care for myself due to age-related decline. They wanted the court to appoint a conservator. They suggested Hewen to manage my finances and make decisions about my living situation. I read it 3 times. Each time, the betrayal felt fresh. Each time, I felt it like a physical impact. Leviel called me that afternoon. "I got the filing," he said. "Don't worry, we're prepared. I want you to understand something, though. This is going to get ugly. They're going to try to paint you as someone who can't be trusted with her own life. They might bring up minor incidents. They might exaggerate things. They might try to make you look bad in front of the judge. What do? You show up. You answer their questions. You're calm and clear and intelligent. You let the judge see exactly who you are. And we present our evidence, your medical evaluations, your financial records, your doctor's letter, the truth." The court date was set for 6 weeks away. 6 weeks of waiting, 6 weeks of knowing my family had gone this far, had actually filed legal documents, had actually taken this step. I didn't hear from any of them. Not Nelilyn, not Maxio or Leveo or Hugan, not their wives. Nothing. The silence was somehow worse than the confrontation had been. I filled those 6 weeks by living my life exactly as I always had. I went to my book club meetings. I had dinner with friends. I tended my garden. I read. I painted the guest bedroom a soft blue because I wanted to, because it was my house and my choice. I did everything they'd suggested I couldn't do, and I did it all perfectly well. But underneath, I was terrified. I'd never been in court before. I'd never been accused of incompetence. I'd never had my family turn against me so completely. I lay awake some nights, wondering if I'd made a mistake. If I should have just agreed to move to the facility. If I should have capitulated to avoid all of this. Then I'd remember the look on Emmeline's face. The way she'd pulled out those photos like evidence of my failure. The way they'd all sat in my living room and discussed me like I wasn't there. And I'd get angry again. And the anger would carry me through. The morning of the hearing, I wore a navy blazer and dark pants. I did my hair carefully. I looked professional and competent and like someone who absolutely could manage her own life. Leviel met me at the courthouse. He reviewed the questions they might ask. He told me to answer simply and honestly. He told me not to get defensive. Just be yourself, he said. The judge will see the truth. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more intimate, more real. Nelilyn was there. So were Hewen and Leveo. Maxio was there too. They sat at the other table with their lawyer, a man named Mares Gordon, who looked like he'd been doing this for 40 years. The judge was a woman named Leela Ella Adams. She looked to be in her 70s. She had sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. The hearing started with Mares Gordon presenting their case. He called Nelilyn to the stand. My sister testified that I'd become increasingly forgetful, that I'd left the stove on, that I'd forgotten phone calls, that I lived alone and was at risk, that my house was falling apart, that I needed supervision. I listened to her describe me like I was a stranger, like I was someone fragile and failing. She was my sister. We'd shared a womb. We'd shared childhood. And she sat there and painted me as someone who couldn't be trusted. Then it was my turn. Leviel called me to the stand. I put my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. I sat in the witness box and looked at the judge. Leviel asked me simple questions about my medical history, about my finances, about my daily life. I answered each one clearly and completely. Yes, I had left the stove on once. I'd been distracted. It had never happened before. Yes, I sometimes forgot who I'd called when I was busy. I was a busy person. No, I had no medical conditions. Yes, I was managing my finances perfectly well. No, I didn't need supervision or assistance. Then Mares Gordon stood up for cross-examination. He was trying to find cracks. He asked me detailed questions about my medications, my medical history, my finances. He was looking for confusion, for contradiction, for anything he could use. I didn't give it to him. I was sharp and clear and precise. I knew my medical history. I knew my finances down to the penny. I knew exactly what medications I took and why. I was everything they'd said I wasn't. Then Leviel called my doctor. Shayna Bailey testified about my medical evaluation. She confirmed that I was in excellent health, that my cognitive function was normal, that there was absolutely no medical basis for the claim that I was incapacitated. The judge listened to everything. She took notes. She asked questions. She seemed genuinely interested in the truth, not just in winning a case. Then she delivered her ruling. She dismissed the petition for conservatorship. She found no evidence of incapacity. She found no medical basis for the claim. She stated that leaving a stove on once and occasionally forgetting a phone call were normal human experiences, not signs of incompetence. She said that age alone was not grounds for removing someone's autonomy. She looked directly at my family. "The petitioners have failed to meet the burden of proof," she said. "This petition is dismissed. Mrs. Ramos retains full authority over her person and her finances." I sat in that courtroom and felt the weight lift. Not all of it. Some of it would never lift. But enough to breathe again. As we filed out, I didn't look at my family. I didn't acknowledge them. Leviel walked me to my car. "You did well," he said. "You were exactly what the judge needed to see." I drove home alone. My house was waiting for me, exactly as I'd left it. My roses were still blooming. The roof was fixed. The guest bedroom was blue. Everything was exactly as it should be, but nothing was the same. The days after the hearing were strange. I waited for Nelilyn to call. She didn't. I waited for Maxio to reach out. He didn't. I waited for any of them to acknowledge what they'd done, to apologize, to try to repair things. Nothing came. A week passed, then 2. I went to my book club. I went to the grocery store. I tended my garden. I lived my life. But there was a hollowness to it now, a space where my family had been. Then, 3 weeks after the hearing, Hewan called. My eldest son, the one who'd always tried to be the peacemaker. "Mom, we need to talk," he said. "I don't think we do," I replied. "Please, just listen. We made a mistake. We were worried about you and we handled it wrong. Really wrong. We should have talked to you instead of planning it behind your back. We should have listened when you said you were fine. We're sorry." I held the phone to my ear and said nothing. Sorry. They were sorry. After filing legal documents, after threatening to take my autonomy, after proving they didn't trust me, after humiliating me in court. Sorry. "I appreciate that," I said quietly, "but I need some time." "How much time?" "I don't know yet." I hung up before he could say anything else. Over the following weeks, they all tried to reach out. Maxio sent flowers with an apology card. Leveo called several times. Nelilyn sent a letter. Emmeline and Coralie both texted. They were all sorry. They'd all made a mistake. They wanted to fix things. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I needed to understand something first. I needed to understand why they'd done it. Not the surface reason, the stove, the forgetfulness, the fear, but the real reason. What had they been so afraid of? I spent hours thinking about it, about the way they'd looked at me in that living room, about the way they'd discussed me like I was a problem to be solved, about the way they'd seen my independence as a threat. And I realized something. They were afraid of me, not physically, but they were afraid of what I represented. A woman alone. A woman who didn't need them. A woman who made her own decisions and lived her own life. That terrified them, because it meant they couldn't control me. It meant they couldn't manage me. It meant I was a variable they couldn't predict. So they'd tried to make me small. They'd tried to make me dependent. They'd tried to turn my age into a liability, my solitude into a weakness, my independence into a sign of incompetence. And when I wouldn't cooperate, they'd gone to court to make it legal. I didn't forgive them, not right away. It took months for me to even consider it, but I did something else. I changed my will. I removed Hewan as executor and named Leviel instead. I left a detailed letter explaining exactly what had happened and why I'd made this decision. I wanted it on record. I wanted it documented. I wanted the truth preserved. Then I moved forward. I joined a women's group at the community center. Women my age, women living alone, women who understood what it meant to claim your own life. I made new friends. I took a painting class. I volunteered at the library. I filled my days with purpose and meaning that had nothing to do with my family. 6 months after the hearing, Nellalyn called again. This time, I answered. "Hi," she said. Her voice was small. "Hi," I replied. "I've missed you," she said. I had missed her too, but I wasn't sure that was enough anymore. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Why did you really do it? Not the excuse about the stove. The real reason?" There was a long silence. "Because we were scared," she finally said. "You were alone, and we couldn't control that. We couldn't manage it. We couldn't fix it. And that scared us." At least she was honest. "I'm not asking you to control me," I said. "I'm not asking you to manage my life. I'm asking you to respect me, to trust me, to see me as someone who knows what she needs." "I know," Nellalyn said. "I see that now. I'm sorry, Gia. I'm really sorry." "Okay," I said. "I'm still working on forgiving you, but okay." We talked for a while after that. Not about what had happened, about other things, about her job, about Huon's kids, about the weather. Small, normal things. It was a start. A week later, I agreed to have Huon and his family over for dinner. We didn't talk about the hearing. We ate and we talked about their lives and their work and their kids. It was awkward and strained, but it was something. Over the following months, I slowly let them back in. Not all the way, not to where we'd been before, but enough. Enough to have a relationship. Enough to see each other. Enough to acknowledge that we were family, even if that family was flawed and complicated and had tried to take my life from me. But things had changed. Fundamentally, I would never trust them the way I had before. I would never assume they had my best interests at heart. I would never forget what they'd tried to do. And I would never, ever let them make me feel small again. A year after the hearing, I was sitting in my garden. The roses were blooming again. They came back every spring, faithful and persistent. I was reading a book and drinking tea and living my life exactly as I wanted to live it. Maxio called. We'd been slowly rebuilding our relationship. He was trying. They were all trying. "Mom, I was thinking," he said. "We should do a family dinner. Everyone, like we used to." I thought about that. About sitting around a table with the people who'd tried to take my autonomy. About pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. About being the bigger person and moving forward. "Okay," I said. "But at my house. And I'm making the decisions about when and what we eat. And if anyone tries to discuss my living situation or my age or my competence, I'm done. They can leave." "Fair enough," Maxio said. We set it for the following weekend. I spent the days before preparing. I made my famous lasagna. I bought wine. I set my table carefully. I wanted everything to be beautiful and controlled, and exactly the way I wanted it. The day of the dinner, they all arrived. All 7 of them. My 3 sons, and their wives, and my sister. They brought flowers and wine, and they were all trying so hard. Trying to make it normal. Trying to pretend the past year hadn't happened. We ate dinner, and we talked, and we laughed. And for moments, it almost felt like it used to. Almost. But I knew the truth now. I knew what they were capable of. I knew that love and betrayal could exist in the same people at the same time. I knew that family wasn't guaranteed to have your back. I knew that I couldn't rely on them to respect my autonomy. I knew that I had to be my own advocate, my own protector, my own champion, and I was okay with that. More than okay. I was strong with it. After dinner, as they were leaving, Nellalyn hugged me. "I'm proud of you," she said. for standing up for yourself, for not letting us push you around. I hugged her back. I'm proud of me too, I said. That night, after they'd all left, I sat in my living room and looked around. My house, my space, my life. Everything exactly as I'd chosen it. No one had the authority to take that from me. No one ever would again. I'd learned something through all of this. I'd learned that age wasn't a liability. I'd learned that living alone wasn't a weakness. I'd learned that my independence was a strength, not something to be ashamed of. I'd learned that I was capable of standing up for myself, even against my own family. I'd learned that the greatest power I had was the power to say no, and I would never forget that lesson. Today, 2 years after the intervention, I'm still living in my house. I'm still managing my own life. I'm still making my own decisions. My family and I have a relationship, but it's different now. It's built on honesty instead of assumptions. It's built on respect instead of control. It's built on the understanding that I am my own person, with my own life, and my own right to live it exactly as I choose. The roses still bloom every spring. The roof is maintained. The house is clean. My finances are in order. My life is full, and I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. If you're facing pressure from your family about your independence, if you're being told you're too old to be alone, if you're being threatened with legal action to control your life, stand firm. You have the right to your own autonomy. You have the right to your own choices. You have the right to live your life on your own terms. Don't let anyone take that from you.